Now, turning to our program, please welcome former Mayor of Wauwatosa and community volunteer Kathy Ehley to introduce today's panel.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It is so great to see such a good crowd here to hear about the Rotary International projects that we're doing in Guatemala. So I'd like to introduce, these are all people you know, but Jerry Stepaniak, Paige Radke, and Eric Isbister. So we are going to take about a half an hour, 20 minutes. We've really look at the schedule that we put together because there's so much information to share that we're trying really hard to be concise about this. So let's get started. And a half. Okay, we're going to first view a video that was created this past year we had a film crew go along on one of the Guatemalan trips. And I want to say a special thank you to Roger Kay and Sue Borey, who they spent an enormous amount of time capturing video and interviewing people, and then getting 10 hours worth at least of tape down to 4 minutes. So here we go.
Steep climbs, dirt roads, and a jarring ride for Jerry Stepaniak and other Rotary volunteers on their way to observe a water project deep in the remote mountains of Guatemala's central highlands.
An area that is scarred by civil war, by natural disasters, by debilitating poverty, doing what Rotarians do best, helping people lead better lives.
Access is not easy. Supplies are increasingly expensive. Heavy equipment cannot reach isolated mountain sites. So how do you build a bridge? How do you bring clean water to a remote village?
Milwaukee Rotary is doing its 14th project in Guatemala, a record of success totally dependent on its process.
Every one of these projects highlight 3 crucial components absolutely necessary for a successful and sustainable project. First and foremost is community and municipality involvement. The community itself must identify, agree upon, and partner with the municipality to request our participation for each project.
The village decides what needs to be done, not us.
Cash-poor communities pay their share in the one commodity they have in abundance: volunteer labor. In El Manantial, a bucket brigade mixes river gravel with cement from the municipality to make concrete and then carries it, bucket by bucket, to the pour site. In Pachalip, a 13-kilometer trench is dug by hand in rocky ground to bury the water pipe from the spring to the village. The second crucial component is technical expertise. Engineers Without Borders student chapters in the U.S. partner with the professionals of Engineers Without Borders in Guatemala to identify and analyze sites. Construction plans are drawn up by student engineers from Marquette University, Milwaukee School of Engineering, or University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, under the close supervision of Engineers Without Borders advisors. Engineers Without Borders Guatemala staff oversees project management, training, and evaluation. The third and final component is, of course, funding. Rotary clubs, districts, and the Rotary Foundation World Fund collaborate to raise the necessary funding. It is also critical to partner with a local Rotary club like Vista Hermosa in Guatemala City, who directly oversees the expenditures and the exacting financial requirements of Rotary Global grants. These partnerships ensure the most efficient use of the available funds. Boots on the ground solve local issues.
Does this really work? Let's take a brief look at what we've accomplished. we find ways to get things done. A small amount of effort will produce a dramatic change in the lives of people. The opportunities are presenting themselves. Will we respond?
Each of you should have an information sheet on your tables. It's a folded little brochure that has a lot of details about what we do on our international projects. And it's important to really, I hope we can convey how meaningful this work is, because it really has impacted all of us. And that's what we wanted to share with you and hope inspire you and help you be proud of what your Rotary Club is doing internationally. Note that over $1 million has been invested by Rotary clubs, and over $160,000 has come directly from the Milwaukee Rotary. And that does not include the local Guatemalan contributions and all the labor and volunteer time that they give. Jerry, we covered a lot in that, but I'm sure you have a few things that you'd like to add about partnerships and the impact.
First of all, I have to get accustomed to seeing myself on film. It's very disconcerting. I'd like to emphasize the partnering. It's absolutely key to how we get these projects done. It's how we communicate. It's how they get designed. It's how they get followed up. It's how we get the funding. And so if you remember nothing else, partnering, partnering, partnering. And we've got some fabulous fabulous infrastructure of partners that allows us to really implement these things very nicely. The other thing is kind of what Kathy said, and that is one gets kind of a slow realization that a small amount of very focused work on our part makes an enormous difference. A difference you actually can't appreciate until you see people and start talking to them. We literally change people's lives, not just a person, but an entire community's life by bringing them clean water. It's very satisfying to be a part of that kind of endeavor. But what we remember is, yes, it takes some work on our part, but what a payoff.
Thanks, Jerry. And now these videos that we produce, this is the first time the Rotary Club has actually produced or had a video done. That is going to be used for fundraising when we're going out and talking with other clubs. And you saw the list, and you can see in the brochure that's on your table, the list of clubs that contribute to these projects. And again, those are all partnerships. Those are all very, very important things. And Eric, we didn't, in this video, this covered the infrastructure portion of it, but you've been into Guatemala as part of the infrastructure projects, but also another project that the Rotary does, Alliance for Smiles.
Along with the work that we do on bridges and schools and sanitary systems and water, this club arranged to work with Alliance for Smiles. That's a nonprofit out of San Francisco that does work with cleft lip and cleft palates. The goal of Alliance for Smiles worldwide, mostly developing countries, is to work on cleft palate surgeries and train the local people such that when Alliance for Smiles leaves, the local people can do the operations themselves. It works very well. Cleft, if you don't know, is a slit in the upper lip or palate. Sometimes these children don't have any palate at all. It's something that hasn't formed before birth in the child. Every 3 minutes worldwide, a child's born with cleft. Approximately 1 in 700 babies, including here. You don't see so much cleft in developed countries because we fix it earlier. We do the surgeries. Having cleft affects the ability to eat, ability to talk. They get frequent, depending on how bad it is, frequent infections, and the obvious social problems. One of the nurses that we were working with Alliance for Smiles told a story of a mission they did in Nigeria where a young mother with a 2-week-old baby had walked to get the surgery done. The Alliance for Smiles surgeons said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, your baby is too young. Bring her back next year and we'll do the surgery." The lady burst out into tears. She had walked about 16 hours. They said due to the anesthetics, they couldn't do the thing. And as I said, she burst out into tears. She told the Alliance people that she had had a prior baby with a cleft lip, and if she took her baby back, her 2-week-old baby back, the town fathers would put the baby in the fire. So the Alliance people had a huddle. They decided maybe a problem with anesthetics, definitely a problem with the fire. They did the surgery and it worked out very well. Susan Taylor, Mary Isbister, and I went. We had 19 volunteers. There were surgeons, anesthesiologists, nurses, and there are some non-medical positions, record keeper, and I joked that I was a dishwasher once, sterilizing instruments for the operating room. In Guatemala, we did, 50 surgeries on 33 patients. In Bangladesh in 2018, the same trio went from this crowd. We did 77 surgeries then. It's an amazing thing to change the life of people.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Each of us who has been touched by these things comes from a different place, gets involved for a different reason. And Paige, could you share with us how you got involved?
Yeah, of course. So, nowadays it feels like I will talk about Guatemala to anyone who's willing to listen. But in all honesty, when I first joined Rotaract, so not even Rotary, I was much more interested in the local community service side of things. It feels like there's so much that we can do close to home. It had never really crossed my mind to go the international route. But I think that's one of the great things about Rotary. It's not just about connecting us to each other, but it's also about connecting to new opportunities that we may not have had otherwise. And so truthfully, I was really nervous when I first decided to go on the trip. I didn't know anyone that I was going with. I had no idea what I was in for. And I almost agreed out of spite as people were telling me that my now husband should go on the trip. But I think that the most important aspect was just getting to see the whole process. Being able to visit past projects, so that ones that were already completed, to learn about the real impact it had on the community. Visiting projects that were in process to get to see the community involvement and working side by side right at the forefront. But then also going and seeing new projects and hearing the needs of the community and just, how much this means to them, that there's even someone just there to listen and learn about some of the needs that they have down there. I also really enjoyed working with the Engineers Without Borders students. They're just amazing people. Even in the video, I saw a couple clips of students that were freshmen the first time I went. And now here they are leading the project. So it's really an important experience for them as well. And I feel like, a lot of groups do international service work, but so often you're going to see it's a one and done. So kind of going back to that whole process, it just had a huge impact on me to see the entire community involvement and the outcome of everything. And I think a great example, we have a couple pictures here, but a great example is the Chupo site, which was one of the first actual water pumps where we had to bring water up instead of down. And the first year I went, it was a huge celebration. We had kids with signs and they were blasting off fireworks, and it was, the kickoff to say we're finally getting water to this community. And when we were there, I even got to lay one of the first stones, which to me is just one of those memories that will live on forever. But then, of course, there were issues outside of our control that put a bit of a pause on the project, so it was a little bit more delayed. But I came back the next year on the trip, and still we came back to that community. So when we thought we were going to be celebrating a completion of a project, we weren't quite there yet. But that didn't mean that we didn't want to come and listen and talk with the community members. And so at one point, the mood was so much more somber that I gave an impromptu speech in very broken Spanish and just told the community how much it meant to us to be there again, how much it meant to us to be a part of this project for them. And, each year we bring down Polaroid cameras to give just, a little token of something to some members of the community, because oftentimes they don't have a tangible physical picture of themselves. And as we were, offering to take those Polaroids, the whole community of women actually lined up next to me to take a picture with me. So the one picture that we were giving them, they wanted to have that kind of memory, and it was just very touching. And again, I'll just never forget how much of an impact that this project makes on the community members down there. And it's so important that we keep doing that good work.
Thank you, Paige. And there's always needs. Wherever you go, you see we're making progress in providing water to a village that had to have their young girls walk 2 hours up the mountain to go to a mountain stream and carry it back down. And I hope everybody's finished lunch, but I think one of the things that really hit me was we were in one village where they had a new water supply, and the mother said the thing that profoundly impacted her is her 2 little boys no longer had constant diarrhea. I mean, this is so basic, and when we come back to the States, or I've visited other places like this, I just, it's how do we communicate with each other and remind each other how much we have here in this country, and how we take things that are fresh water and streets and schooling so for granted. These people don't take it for granted. They work very hard to have access to it. So Jerry and Eric, I'd like you to share a little bit about what you see as future needs based on the experiences that you've had.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, more and better. We are, the last couple of years, we've done 2 projects each year in conjunction with many other Rotary clubs and many other Rotary districts, frankly, throughout the United States. We've got 5 or 6 that have contributed. I think we want to continue because the need for water is so dramatic, as people have talked about here. We want to expand a bit. We did one project involving a solar array. Was a fabulous hit because it allows that community, at least when the sun is out, to not have to spend money on electricity for a well. And that is a big deal. And I think we want to explore a little more whether we can bring some more solar installations to a number of these villages. Wastewater treatment is a whole nother topic which we could have a whole program about. The bottom line is there isn't much going on in Guatemala with wastewater treatment. And because of that, we have got to figure out a way of at least starting that whole effort. We've started some discussions, including locally with MMSD and Marquette University. That's got a guy who's very knowledgeable in the area. And so in the future, we hope to have something to pilot with one of the communities as well in that area. And one of the things we clearly want to do is to expand the circle. We have, you saw the list on the film of the number of contributing clubs here, but there are many clubs in Wisconsin that have not contributed to, frankly, any international effort. And probably because of their size, they really can't really mount an effort of their own. So we have a number of volunteers from our club who are going to be going out to speak to a number of clubs. They may be using the films that you have seen today. I think having their involvement, getting the involvement of a couple of more districts, and frankly from individuals. There are folks who can look at their checkbook and you could maybe give something, and you're probably getting 19 or 20 or 21 requests a week on what you're going to give. But the impact of giving here is clear and documentable, and I think it would be a fabulous place for you to invest your riches.
As Jerry said, the impact is clear on the local Mayan community. Let's not forget the impact it has on the students as well. There's formative changes in these students. Um, Typical students, typical engineers spend a lot of time in the classroom, maybe a lab, a lot of books, a lot of computers. These students not only have to do all of that, design the systems, then they have to get on an airplane and go there and build it. Imagine the change in a student when they have, maybe they took Spanish in high school or something, but imagine the change in them that occurs when they're faced with 40 local people with shovels waiting for the student to tell the local people what to do and when to do and how to dig and where to go. You also have to solve problems. I was working the first trip I went on, working on a leaching field for a school. The gravel was too leaky and wouldn't have worked. There was a problem. It had to perk well. There's a desire to use things that are available in the local community. They went to the local hardware store and bought grain bags, split the grain bags open, laid them down on the leaching field, and then it wouldn't perk well enough. So scratch, scratch, scratch. Took a board, put some nails in it, and went around with the board, went all over the grain bags, and now it covered it up, and it worked perfectly. So they get taught to solve practical problems. It makes a giant difference in those students. I would hire any one of them because of that change.
Paige, you helped with that egg piercing, didn't you?
I did, and I think that's one of the great part about having new innovative minds as part of the project is the first year you went, that became a solution to a problem that you weren't planning for. The year I went, we're digging a leach field, so I was down there digging gravel with some of the local community members, and in this case, what turned into a last minute solution became the actual solution going forward. So I also had some fun with some nails and boards, really taking out some of my aggression on those bags. But I mean, I think to your point again, with the students going down there, like you said, they pay their own way. They sleep on the ground or maybe a hammock if they're lucky. They spend their entire time there. So they're not traveling around seeing things like we are. They really commit their time down there to helping that local community. And so, again, I can't give enough, grace to the students that go down there as well.
It was really impressive. And, we're talking quite seriously about all the efforts and how it helps the people. But there's a great deal of joy that comes and that we see in the interaction with the people. It's just amazing. And the students that were on the part of the group that I was on in spring, they actually did sleep at the location in a cement block building, no windows, hammocks, just strung concrete floor. There were 4 women who came whose husbands were working on the project, and they were the cooks, and their children were there. And the students became so close with these children throughout that week. It was just, it just gives me shivers just to remember that. So it isn't just the engineering aspect. It's so social and community building and just an incredibly joyful time too as well.
And Kathy, just another sidebar, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Kata. So Kata is one of the local community members down there who, she comes on the Rotary trips. She serves as a translator because it's not just Spanish. There's a lot of local dialects. And so not everybody that we're going to visit, most of them don't speak English, and a lot of them don't even speak Spanish. So, not only does she travel with us and serve as a translator, but she also stays with the students and is oftentimes, the cook. Her and her sister will come and they're the ones making the food. And she's just one more person who, every time I see Mike Paddock, my very first question is, how's Kata?
Thank you for sharing that. I had bought a Rotary fleece to wear on the trip, and I ended up wearing it every single day. And one day it got warm in the afternoon, and I took it off and I put it in the top bin of the bus, thinking we had to use the same bus every day. Well, overnight, they had switched buses on us, and I was really upset that I lost my great Rotary fleece. Well, the next morning, Katja had it on me with me for breakfast, and she made it happen. She called back. She got that fleece over to me. She just handles. She's so attentive, and I feel that's where a lot of the people were for us. So we are sure. Go ahead.
Just one thing comes to mind. It's obvious that the change we've made in the local Mayan community, we talked about the change we made in the students. This group, this committee, Jerry's committee, also does something for you. I've said many times that this club is a conduit for doing good things. It's enabled me to do things I never would have imagined before. So not only has it changed you, but when you're talking to prospective Rotarians, people that you might want to come into the club, tell them these stories. Tell them what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Just real quick, we have another short 1-minute video we're going to show, but who in the room, would you please stand up if you've gone on one of the trips to Guatemala? Chris, stand up. Okay, so you see us. If you have more questions, because we've had a half an hour here, if you have more questions, you can talk to any one of us about the impact. We're not doing a travel encouragement. That's not it. It's ask any of us what the experience was like and what impact we see. So now let's go into our, Mary.
Video. Have a couple of minutes. We haven't talked about Escuintla Hospital, which is a significant
Thank you.
project that we've worked on and will be working on. So maybe 2 minutes, Jerry, on what we saw at Escuintla would be valuable.
Yeah, we at the beginning of the pandemic, we have this regular weekly project call to assess the progress on each of the projects that we do. Last week we did number 131 in the series of weekly calls. And we basically said, guys, because we have several people from Guatemala that are on that call, said, okay, we know things are tough. They're tough here too, but we know it's going to be a special kind of difficulty down there. What can we do to help? The next week, Julio, who is sort of an all-star everything in Rotary in Guatemala, came back and basically said, we have a hospital that we are working with, and they're anticipating massive numbers of people coming in with COVID, and they're asking all of their patients to bring their own water with them because the water in the hospital is contaminated, and they think it would be far better if you had clean water. Now, I can't wrap my head around that, and I'm sure you probably can't either. This is a hospital, a big hospital, 276 beds. To make a long story short, we put together a global grant, figured out how to assess the situation from here with our partners in Guatemala. So a new water tower was built, a new a new well was dug that went down like 500 feet. You can get water here at about 50, 70, 90 feet. And new pump and new toilets and sinks and washing stations in the entire hospital. That got done during the pandemic. We visited there last spring. Everything on that system works marvelously, and it is the hospital is monitoring their disease rate, and it has plummeted in terms of the kind of diarrhea-related diseases that you would think. And it's an amazing story that got done. We have some future stuff with that hospital. It turns out in their laundry they have one washing machine and one dryer that work. And we're not sure when the water drains down the drain, what's happening to it, and what the drain looks like. And they are drying the bed linens out on some surplus equipment items that are sitting out in the lawn or on the lawn itself. And guess what? They're finding that they're getting some disease that is introduced into the system on the basis of that sort of process. So we are actively, quietly working with the Madison Club and the club in Edina, Minnesota, to see whether we can try to figure out a way of solving that problem. But the medical system issue, for those of you who work in a medical system, for those of you who have ever been in the medical system, this is an eye-opening experience to go in and see what the level of care is. It is good quality care, but it does not have the level of finesse that we just have come to expect here.
I worked for Children's Hospital for a few years, and so going into that pediatric hospital was very emotional for me. And we do need to help them with that laundry situation, but I will say their nurse to patient ratio is higher than ours. So in some ways they have deficiencies, in some ways they provide more than we do. So yeah, but it was amazing. Why don't we go into our video?
Life is not easy for the people living in the highlands of Guatemala. Basic human needs that we take for granted are not readily available. Clean water, access between communities, schools. Our projects address these needs to help people lead better lives. Every project we take on is initiated by the community. Working together, we produce results. In El Manantial, Julio now has safe drinking water at his home. His mother can wash the food she prepares for their family. Children no longer need to spend hours fetching contaminated water from the river and gathering firewood to boil it. They can go to school. The midwives in Chupo can properly clean their patients and themselves. Mothers and newborns aren't dying from contaminated water infections. Midwives are no longer exposed to diseases from those they must care for. Bridges bring vital connections between villages. Women have access to markets to buy food. The family has a place to sell their produce. People can get medical help far more quickly. Children can get to schools even during rainy season. They now have the opportunity to continue their education beyond primary school. At Escuintla Children's Hospital, patients no longer have to bring their own water to drink or clean their wounds. Medical staff have safe, clean water to wash their hands. Families too can wash their hands and themselves at the tap that now comes right to their home, preventing the spread of disease. At the schools, teachers report fewer school absences due to diarrhea. Before the clean water came to their house, children got sick regularly and missed days of school each month. We help change people's lives for the better. People who have hopes and dreams, just like you and me.
Great videos, just to capture the essence of what we're doing here. I also want to remind you that, twice a year we pay our Rotary membership, and on that statement there's a contribution to the Rotary International Fund. And know that that contribution that goes to Rotary International does come back to us through grants for our international projects. And what you have seen and heard about today is putting those dollars to work. So we have maybe 10 minutes for questions and answers. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask the group. Anyone?
Okay, I don't have any questions, but the school hospital, one of the things that just blew me away is that in that infant ward, they went
1, 2.
from 85% mortality rate to 5% because of our water. It just blew me away. It's just amazing. You know, it's just, we do good things. It's really cool.
I'm just curious, what kind of credentials do you need to make that trip, and what kind of shots and things you need to take before you do that?
Well, the advice is to talk to your doctor. Several of the hospital systems here have actually an international clinic, and you can certainly call them and go see them. I will warn you, your insurance may not cover it, and you might have an eye-popping response to what the bill is. But I've been there on numerous occasions. I think I have malaria. I can't remember whether they were shots or pills or what they were. Sometimes yellow fever, and whatever the disease of the month or year happens to be. We've never really had anyone that has really come back with any particular problem. When we go, we stay in decent hotels, not 5-star hotels, obviously, but they're clean, and things seem to work out pretty well.
Well, so there's a couple cardinal rules when you go to Guatemala, and I know there's 3 of them. I can't remember one, but 2 of the ones that I always remember are don't sing in the shower. You don't want that water in your mouth. And the other one is do not pet the dogs. The dogs are not your friends. So as long as you're smart, I think the only other 2 that I had to get was typhoid and hepatitis A.
There is an outfit here in Milwaukee, I forget the name of it, but they can tell you what shots you need and what pills you need to take for each place that you're going. I know when I've gone to Guatemala, I've never seen a mosquito. I went to Bangladesh, saw lots of mosquitoes, but there hasn't been any bugs at all in Guatemala.
I don't even remember, so it couldn't have been that bad. I know I got all the shots and pills and everything that I needed, but that's a forgotten part of it.
I love what we're doing, and I guess my question is more towards Paige to provide somebody who's contemplating going on a trip. What do they need to do to get them over the hump like you did?
Well, first of all, someone just needs to ask your wife or tell you that your wife should go on the trip. No, I'm just kidding. But, I think it's just remembering that obviously life is short. There's these experiences, obviously, within the Rotary Club come around every year. But, for me at the time, being in Rotaract and getting that opportunity, I really looked at it as once in a lifetime. I never really considered going back a second time. And so, I think that anytime you're looking back, you already have heard a lot about the work that we're doing. You've already heard about, the impact that it has on us. But, just remember that it's an experience like none other. It's very, very well organized. There was no point in time where, I didn't know what was going on or where we were going next. And, all of the people on the trip are great. There's a lot of return travelers. And so, again, I was hesitant. And looking back, I laugh at that because there's really no reason to have been nervous or worried about the experience down there.
I remember people asking me if I was afraid because you hear Central America and crime. There was never once, other than when our bus hit the side of the mountain. But that was more our issue. But never once did I feel personally unsafe throughout the whole trip.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good exemplification of it is, when I told my mom, and she goes, "Oh, honey, why?" And my response was, "Why not?" Couldn't think of a good reason. So,
But remember, this isn't a tourism program. This is really a lifetime experience to be grateful. To be grateful that we are able to help people, to get to know people, to find out that we have many, many things in common. We all want safety. We all want health. We all want our children to grow up well. So we have so much in common, but it's really incredible to see how other people live.
Yeah, the many wonderful comments and reports you gave. One that really struck me was the Young Engineers Without Borders, giving them purpose in a way, that relationship that gets to your heart as well as your head. And for those of us who are dealing with young people these days, the mental health issues, suicide, lack of purpose, hits us every day. This might not be in your sandbox, but I appreciate any thoughts you have on this project, which obviously is miles and miles away, having any opportunity to give our young people purpose, whether it be high school students or college students.
One thing that really impressed me about what we do in this whole process, because it isn't just, as you said, a one-time project that you go there and all the building materials are there. The students put so much time and thought into how to solve problems. And so they're working on it for a year, 2 years. And that, I think, it gives them a real sense of purpose. But Jerry, you work with the students a lot.
Eric made some comments earlier about the students and their involvement in the process. It is an amazing thing to watch because you have students who probably would talk very much as Paige had articulated that, what am I getting into and how's this all going to work and whatever. And you watch them attack the problem. You watch them figure out how they're going to get enough money raised to fund their trip down there, deal with all of the problems of daily living when they're in this very communal living situation, and then sort of make the adjustments in what their theoretical construct was here in the classroom when they actually are there and said, okay, is that really all downhill or is it some of it partially uphill, in which case we have to change the plan, all of those kinds of things. And I've seen kids that have been in this process that have basically cheerfully talked about how this has changed their approach to an awful lot of things. It's sort of in those particular cases, it was sort of a potentially life-changing perspective on how the rest of the world lives and what it is that they can do to help change that. And I'm really proud to be connected with that kind of situation.
We talked about Engineers Without Borders students. I know these trips are starting to get a little bit crowded, but the third trip that this club went on, I took my teenage son. I can tell you it changed his life. Not only the fact that he and I were assigned to dig a gray water tank, and by the time we were done that afternoon, they were taking the dirt up with a bucket on a string, so we dug a hell of a hole. But it makes a giant difference in students here if they could go as well.
And I think about how can we use that same approach here in the United States for students, because even in our own communities, if we could apply something like this so that the students could be really the initiators, the problem solvers, with the adults being the mentors, I think it would give them a great sense of purpose. So that's something for all of us to noodle on. Maybe we can figure that one out.
This certainly is a good example of service above self, and I'm sure they provide you with a great list of things to bring with you. Did any of you find when you got there, gee, I wish I'd have brought my Swiss Army knife or a roll of duct tape or a handful of Band-Aids?
Well, we brought toilet paper because we were instructed to bring that, which we ended up not really needing. You use it very sparingly. You learn when a country doesn't have a sewage system, you use toilet paper very sparingly.
I will say the one thing I wish I had brought was Dramamine. As you kind of saw in the video, the roads are windy. It sometimes is dark and it's really bumpy. So if you get a little car sick, I definitely recommend bringing that. But I mean, for the most part, you know, you're in a different country, but you can still go buy things, you know. So if you need to go buy Band-Aids, they have Band-Aids at the store. If you forget your sweater, you can go to the market and you can get a sweater. So, you know, there's still opportunities to kind of fill any of those missing pieces once you're there.
Kathy, we've been talking about the EWB students, and we have two of them here. And I don't know whether they want to just, I don't want to put them on the spot. You don't have to say anything, but if you want to just say one or two things. They're with Marquette's chapter. Mark Federley, who is our Rotarian, is the student advisor of this group.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nico, and this is Ashley, and we're the president and vice president of Engineers Without Borders at Marquette. I just want to speak to a little bit about what was said earlier about purpose and a sense of purpose as a young engineer and going into the engineering field. I can say without a doubt that EWB has been the best part of my college experience. Even this past summer, I was working an internship. You know, I was kind of deciding, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Is this something I'm really interested in? And then at the end of the internship, I got to go to Guatemala for 2 weeks, and I just forgot all about that. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a part of this for the rest of my life. It's given me a purpose. It's given me something that I know is causing real change, and I can't thank you enough for all of your support, all of Rotary support, all of outside funding. I mean, the change that it makes is tangible. People have children because they know they can get fresh water, clean water. People build houses because they know they can support those houses with water. So it's really just kind of unfathomable until you're down there seeing it firsthand. And I just can't thank you all enough for the support that you give. So thank you.
Yeah, so I actually used to be biomedical engineering, and I changed my entire major because of the experience I had with EWB. So this last summer was my first time getting to go down to Guatemala and implementing the project, and seeing how the community members work with you firsthand, seeing our project leads, like they said, solve these problems that come up that, honestly, watching them do that, you wouldn't expect even high-level engineers to be able to solve problems like these literally on the spot. And just seeing the teamwork that these people have, the love they have for each other, and also just the gratitude that they have for you coming down and helping them deliver this basic human need that a lot of them don't even realize that they really, I guess, deserve to have. It's really just life-changing. And I, like Nico said, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my degree this past summer. And then after I went to Guatemala and helped implement this water project, I realized that I wanted to focus on water engineering with my environmental engineering degree. So again, thank you all for everything that you've done for our club and for the people in Guatemala. We wouldn't be able to deliver such large-scale projects if we didn't have your support. So really thank you for that, and thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.